1. I moved from Florida to Minnesota in 2019, before the COVID boom. Every place I've lived here since then has had bad neighbors. My first apartment in Orlando had neighbors above me that stomped on the floor so hard it knocked ceiling light fixtures on the ground. They also blasted music all day. Then the person that my room shared a wall with mounted a TV with a subwoofer to the wall and blasted the TV all night. I left that lease early to rent a house. I thought that would be the end of it, but I had one neighbor that blasted music in their backyard again with a subwoofer. I worked from home, and they were somewhat friendly, so I was able to ask them to turn it down, because my office lined up with their backyard. But there was also a mentally unstable man across the street that used to stalk me, and he also blasted music that rumbled through my house. Finally, I moved to a new town and stayed with my mom for a while. No one blasted music there. It's the only quiet neighborhood I've experienced. So I thought it was safe to get another place. Wrong. I just moved in here about 2 weeks ago, and almost every day, this house 2 floors down has been blasting a huge sub in the back of their house. Not only that, they have a giant spotlight that shines right into my window. Last night they kept me up for hours. I've called the local police, who does come out, but I'm looking for additional ways to end this issue. Some people recommended retaliation. But what can I even do? What on earth is wrong with people down here? I think I may have to leave the state. Update. A pretty disappointing update. When I first called after the a-hole music blasting started, I spoke to a helpful officer that said they would need to go on record if I wanted them to receive an official warning. I declined it and said I would just prefer if you talked with them to see if they would be reasonable. Listen to music, but it should never be loud enough to shake someone's house 2 doors down. The officer agreed. Then, of course, New Year's Eve was hell, extremely loud music and a huge spotlight shining in my window until 2 a.m. Then today it started again at 6 a.m. This time they were blasting it so loud, you could hear it around the other side of the neighborhood. They were also screaming and chasing their kids. That's what it sounded like. It's totally fine if people play with kids outside, but the screaming for hours is so insane. I digress. On to the disappointment. I called right when the music started today. They answered and documented the concern. This time I made sure to tell them that I want to go on record. They said, okay, an officer will come out and give you a call. In the meantime, I got videos of how loud it was to show them. I decided to walk around the neighborhood to get some fresh air and try to de-stress. I turned the corner back onto my street. I see an officer. I, of course, was happy because I was expecting relief to come. Instead, I saw them stopped for less than a minute, drive by, and no phone call. I called back, and they said the officer was still on the scene. Meanwhile, I watched them drive off. Not sure who's lying here, but it sucks. They said they would document more notes, and the officer out there would call after investigating. No call. I called back 2 hours later because they're still doing it. They said no call whatever was put in for that address. At this point, I don't know what else to do. I have ideas. Report the bad officers to the sheriff's police, report to City Hall, report the neighbors to the HOA, sabotage their peace hardcore. Maybe all of the above. What did you do to handle your insane neighbors and it actually worked? I need inspiration. Hellfreezer's note. Well, first and foremost, what you need to do is go the entirely legal route. Can't be doing anything that might get you into trouble, that might come back to bite you on the butt later down the line. So I'll look into what the noise ordinances are where you live. There's certainly there will be a cutoff as to when they can and can't make noise. But I'd imagine even during daylight hours, there's reasonable noise levels. It certainly doesn't sound like they're keeping within reasonable noise levels. I wouldn't bother reporting the police. At best, they'll do nothing. At worst, they'll start harassing you. I think contacting your city council might be a better option. They might be able to take more action than the police can. They might be able to get them evicted if this is a continual thing, and you can't be the only neighbor that has a problem. Possibly if you can marshal the other neighbors against them, it might help bring the problem to a close quicker. My family did have a problem neighbor at one point, and we contacted the local council. They were able to supply us with recording equipment, which was actually put in the room I'm in right now, ironically, that I now use for recording. And whenever they were making noise, having loud parties and such, we'd just record it. And they could tell how loud it was, how long it went on for, and eventually that person got kicked out because of their shenanigans, and they've got no one to blame but themselves. Hopefully, something similar can be done for you. 2. I live in London and am a private tenant. It's a row of one-bedroom houses, kitchen and lounge on the ground floor, bedroom and bathroom upstairs. My next-door neighbour is a council tenant. He moved into the property a few months after I did, and all seemed okay. Periodically, he goes through bouts of playing super loud music and, more concerningly, banging very loudly. Honestly, it sounds like a sledgehammer sometimes, against the dividing wall between our properties. When this happened before, I repeatedly complained to the council and got his housing officer's number. She spoke to him, and things dialed down for a few months. Even after I complained, I gave him some beers, and reiterated I want a normal neighbourly relationship, and all I need from him is to keep music at a low level between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Even when he got a giant dog, I never complained about the barking. It's a dog, it'll settle. And even bought it treats. It all restarted in October. The banging and loud music. I've complained to the council, who've come a few times and issued an abatement notice. I've not been able to get in contact with his housing officer, as she is simply not picking up any of my calls. I don't have her email. He's not answering the door when I knock, plus I've been advised against direct contact by the council now. Never seen him out of the house, no one visits him, he doesn't go to work. Last night the banging was basically against my bed, and I woke up super frightened. I called the noise control team, but they had finished for the night, so they just logged my call. I even called non-emergency number for the police, who basically said it's not their problem. The officer on call even heard the banging on the call. Who can I talk to? Talk to resolve the situation. My landlord is aware and has also called the council. Other neighbours have heard it, but they are not affected as much. But have said they would give statements to back me up. I have kept a log of all the incidents, but have no one to send it to. The noise control team only cares about the noise they can physically verify, so I have to time it to anticipate that it will be loud in the 2 to 3 hours it takes for them to get there. And even when they did, them sending a notice to him hasn't worked. I was told to suggest mediation to his housing officer, but I can't get in contact with her as she won't answer calls. I've had out her manager's email and have emailed and no response. Should I contact a private mediation charity? I inquired about the cost and I would have to pay £900, but it's not legally binding, so he can just ignore showing up or abiding by the agreement. Can I ask the council to check the soundproofing? What department would that be if I'm not a council tenant? Would contacting local councillors and MPs help? How do I go about doing that? Or do I just move? The problem is moving is a big expense and would be so unfair. Also, I'm saving up to buy, and this would really derail me in that, with moving expenses and London rent prices having gone up. Any ideas or practical advice? Much appreciated. Hellfreezer's note, I suggest you set up a camera to record the sound, but also have a timestamp on screen, so the time and date will be available as to when it was recorded. That will help document what's happening, and you can then show the video to the noise people when they come. And just keep doing that, keep documenting everything. As I always say, don't do anything illegal to retaliate, no matter how frustrated you get, as it will only reflect badly on you in the long run. But you've just got to keep it up, keep complaining, contact anyone you can, contact your counsellors, absolutely. Phone call, email, write a letter, anything that might help get their attention. Yeah, essentially, if you get your local counsellor on your side, they might be able to move things along for you. Best of luck with the situation. 3. Some backstory. Before being diagnosed with asthma, I used to smoke weed. State where weed is legal for personal use. I would do this outside for obvious reasons. Although this doesn't violate the terms of my lease, my upstairs neighbor insisted that he wanted to keep his screen door open all day. So I needed to quit smoking outside because he has a baby grandson who comes over sometimes. My neighbor told me to go into some guy's backyard and smoke. I didn't think that was a great idea, but I understood where my neighbor was coming from, so I switched to smoking in my car. Coincidentally, around the same time, I developed asthma symptoms and stopped smoking entirely, opting instead to take edibles. I have smelled the scent of marijuana a few times through his vents, and it's very vague and I never thought anything of it. That first situation with my neighbor happened around half a year ago, but just a few weeks back he put up a sign that said, "Stop smoking pot, you're affecting others' health conditions." I kind of laughed that off, knowing that for sure he thought it was me, but it wasn't. Around that time, the apartment manager sent out an email saying to make sure to smoke weed outside. Anyway, he knocked on my door about a week ago while I was home and my boyfriend was at work. This was pretty late, so I opted not to answer, and he walked away. Keep in mind, obviously, no weed had been smoked by me. Yesterday night he showed up again, a similar story. I was home, it was late, and I tried to ignore him. He's done other stuff that makes him seem not the most stable. But it isn't relevant here. Of course, still not smoking weed, but he kept banging harder and harder and harder, for longer and longer and longer, until I finally opened the door, pretty ticked off at this point. Some variation of the following conversation ensued.
"Please stop smoking weed inside."
"I'm not. I have asthma. I don't smoke weed anymore."
"Okay, well, someone is. And my wife has AFIB, so smelling weed will kill her."
Wow, I've never heard of someone dying just by smelling the scent of marijuana. That must be a rough life. Sorry about that.
"Please just go into that other guy's backyard to smoke."
"I will show you my inhaler if it'll help prove that I'm not the one doing it." I go to grab my inhaler.
No, the other neighbors say it isn't them, though."
"Yeah, I bet. I've smelled it too a few times, super faintly, but I swear in my life it isn't me."
Are you using candles inside?"
"No, that also aggravates my asthma."
"Those also will kill my wife if she smells them through the vents, especially those vanilla ones."
Wow, that sounds like a horrible medical condition.
"If you see the person who's doing this, let them know that they are actively killing my wife."
Still, obviously does not believe a word that I'm saying. Okay, sure. And then he reluctantly left. 4. Good afternoon, everyone. Over the past couple of days, my wife and I have had some unsavory and out-of-the-ordinary interactions with our neighbor, mostly indirectly. Before I get into the interactions, I'll give a little backstory and context that could possibly explain a motive to the interactions. My now wife and I moved from Virginia to Tennessee in July of 2024 because of my wife accepting a new position in her career. The house we rent is essentially attached to our neighbor's house. There's a covered concrete pathway that goes from our front door directly to theirs. Our neighbor is also the property manager of the house we rent, but is not the landlord. When we first moved in, up until this past week, everything has been fine between us. Our neighbor was very friendly and welcoming throughout the rest of the summer, all the way until Christmas, where things started to change. My wife and I got married in December of 2024 in Virginia, so we would be away for a week. My wife asked our neighbor if their 12-year-old kid could watch our cats for us while we were gone. Our neighbor happily agreed to it, and we offered to pay their kid $10 a day for a total of $70, which they also agreed to. This was to feed them twice a day, and that's it. A total time of maybe 3 to 5 minutes each time to walk over to our house and feed them. After we had left to travel back to Virginia, our neighbor started saying how $70 wasn't a fair price because they didn't realize it was a twice-a-day thing. We stood firm on the price and things went quiet, until the day before we were to return. Our neighbor texted my wife saying, "We were about to head out for dinner, so if you could send the money now, that would be great. It will be $140. My wife said no. We agreed to $70, which started a back and forth between them through the text the rest of the night, with our neighbor saying they spoke to a local dog trainer they know, and they told our neighbor that our price wasn't fair as well, After all was said and done, my wife settled to pay $100 just to end the argument, which our neighbor still wasn't happy about. Fast forward through Christmas, we had been keeping our distance from our neighbor because of the previous interaction, aside from a small conversation I had outside of our homes, talking about New Year's plans, which went like any normal conversation we had previous to the cat-sitting price discrepancy. Very friendly and casual. After that, the only thing either one of us had heard from our neighbor was a text they sent me, saying that if we needed to, we could use their driveway behind their house to get out if we needed to, because of a snowstorm we had recently gotten, which made the main driveway difficult to drive through. Now on to the main reason I'm writing this. On Tuesday, the 14th of January 2025, my neighbor arrives at their home laying on their car horn for an abnormally long time. At first I thought they were having an emergency and trying to get my attention. I look out the window. As they get out of their car, our neighbor begins yelling and cursing, saying things like,
"Come outside, bitch. Come to the door, pussy. I know jiu-jitsu. I'll beat your butt."
as well as other profanities. At first, I thought maybe someone was outside, that they were saying these things too, but they were looking in the direction of our house while saying these things. All was quiet, and they had left at some point and arrived back to their house later that evening and did the same thing again. After my wife got home from work that evening, we immediately contacted our landlord, because the two of them have been friends for years and somewhat worked together with rental properties in the town we live in. Our landlord was completely taken aback by what I described happened, and said they had never known our neighbor to act like that. Our landlord believed that it could have had something to do with an issue with one of our neighbor's vehicles that was totaled, and was having problems with the company that took the totaled vehicle. Our landlord said they would speak to our neighbor about it on Thursday, the 16th. On Wednesday, the 15th, our neighbor was home, but we had zero interaction with them, never saw them or anything. On Thursday, I was walking my dog while one of our neighbor's dogs was outside. He's a roaming dog, so he just runs freely outside and doesn't cause any issues. I was walking up the driveway with my dog and our neighbors following us, when the neighbor sticks their head out of their front door to call their dog inside, and acted like I wasn't even there. My only assumption to why they've changed so much could be that their ex, child's parent, apparently used to be into heavy drug usage when they were together, which was info our neighbor shared with us previously. We had noticed that their ex had been coming over and spending more time with our neighbor, which could mean drugs might be in the picture again. My wife and I agreed that if anything happens, like on Tuesday the 14th, that we will contact our landlord and inform them that we don't feel safe living there. We are technically under lease until July of 2025, so I'm not sure there's much we could do other than having to pay to break it. What should we do if this behavior keeps up? We have no problems ignoring our neighbors since we like to keep to ourselves anyways. Hellfreezer's note, you definitely just keep to yourself, continue to ignore them. That's the best thing you can do. They're just going to cause problems, and I wouldn't deal with them at all if you don't have to. Obviously, if they start shouting at you again, I would definitely record and document that. Just quickly grab your phone and record. But beyond that, just ride it out until your leash runs out, and move to a hopefully quieter neighborhood. 5. I already know I'm not the a-hole, I just need to rant. Y'all have been here for less than 4 months. We have been here for over 40 years. Y'all rent. We own. I'm Mom's protector and caregiver now since Dad passed, and I'm coming off 20 plus years of apartment life in some sketchy areas. I'm 50, she's 70, y'all's 30s. I know how this game is played. We were nice. Y'all saw it as weak. Now you're comfy and want to flex. You don't give a damn, then we don't give an F. Times 4. I'll let your little yappy, dangerous dog run around off a leash all the time now. In the beginning, I always saw him on leash and would meet y'all halfway and say hello, because you had him under control. Now y'all put him in your yard, no fence, no supervision, and he comes into our yard full speed, posturing and being aggressive with that little dog complex, while my senior sundown dog is trying to potty in his own fenced-in yard. Running wild in the neighborhood. Super soaker and skunk spray and your house full of brand new furniture. Try me, bitch. No, your dog is not friendly. Actually, the little yapper likes to nip, and you know it. Your wife even called him her problem child several times when you first moved in. I gave it time to see how he acted before I offered a play date with my dog inside of our fence. Nah, this is why no dogs want to play with him at the dog park. Remember what you told me last week? He barks and barks like that at the dog park and nobody wants to play with him. That's just how he is. Yeah, that's you. Let that yappy little prick break skin. See what happens. Keep your dog under control. You're a grown man and it's not our job to train it. I have no tolerance for people that can't control their animals. It means you're weak and lazy. The thing is, we actually do care if your dog were to get hit by a car. I keep my bedroom window open almost all the time, and to be honest, I don't want to hear the crunch or see the stain in the street. Don't tell me how much you love dogs and how you were raised with them. Don't tell me I'm making a problem by calling you out and setting boundaries. You're goddamn right there's a problem. You've clearly shown me y'all don't know the first thing about taking care of dogs or kids. Wife can buy all the cutie dog clothes she wants, have him groomed every week, whatever. But that janky, literal, rope choke chain noose y'all both used to walk him is straight up inhumane and tells me all I need to know. No tags, no collar, no harness, just wrap a rope around his neck. Screw y'all. Y'all clearly don't give a damn about it because your tragedies have let him run away several times in the last few weeks. Hell, you even bitched to me last month about your 3 kids not wanting to take care of the dog the way they should. I watched as he ran wild in the street yesterday for a good 10 minutes and almost got hit by a car several times. Be a man and get your house under control. We showed courtesy to you by letting you use our driveway for overflow parking when you had that big party a few weeks ago. Y'all disrespected our hospitality by letting your guest park his big dully in our driveway last night without asking permission, and there was plenty of room in your driveway. Say it with me, private property. We are quiet, respectful, and try to get along with everyone. Y'all let your daughter's boyfriend sit in your driveway late at night with his bass booming loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. We tried to be polite and helpful when you moved in and even asked if you needed help unloading the truck. Y'all let a pack of wild 8 to 10-year-old Bradleys come over and scream bloody murder every Sunday without ever once telling them to keep down under the guise of coaching and mentoring. Play equals yes. Screaming, cussing, and fighting at the top of their lungs, 20 feet from my bedroom window. Hell no! Learn how to say no, teach them some respect, and don't let a pack of them come to your house and create noise problems for your neighbors. Tell them to face the other direction when they play baseball in your backyard, and try not to hit the custom barn my dad built and break the windows or the antique weather vanes on top. It's not your damn target. Tell them to not hang or climb on our chain link fence because they're bored and just want to destroy things. Our yard is not their playground. Yeah, summer's gonna be great. Y'all need to learn some basic common courtesy and boundaries toward your neighbors if you want to keep the peace around here. We have known your current landlord since he was in diapers, and have him on speed dial. Animal Control has a web portal to submit complaints. Y'all really want to come to this? Screw you. Screw all of you. Screw your mouthy attitude when I had to tell you twice politely to keep your dog out of our yard and get the truck out of the driveway. Running your mouth, giving excuse after excuse, gaslighting, projecting, playing the victim. Yeah, I saw right through you. I might have been a little more understanding of it all if it didn't happen within the last 24 hours. Screaming, cussing kids, y'all's dog being off leash. Then the truck in our drive, bass booming off and on for over an hour the night before. Nobody in this neighborhood has ever acted this way, and Mom has been here since 1980. Give them grace? No. Because it has been every week since they moved in. You don't know what people are going through. Damn straight, but in the immortal words of OG Barney Fife, you've got to nip it in the bud. Your freedom ends where mine begins. What you do in your house on your property is your business. The minute it crosses into our property line or encroaches on our safety, peace, and quiet, it becomes my business. What the hell is wrong with y'all? I bet y'all's last neighbors were happy to see you go. I'm sure if it were a man telling you this, your attitude might be different, but I highly doubt it. Y'all are the problem. Entitlement and arrogance. We're over here being helpful and peaceful. Y'all come in making that damn noise. Screw your noise. I hate confrontation. I prefer to be Sally Bloody Sunshine, but once the line is crossed, I'm Gen X feral. I know sometimes it's necessary to break my foot off in somebody's butt to keep the peace. If my dad were still alive, he'd only have to say it once. Oh, and by the way, the neighbors on the other side of you? Yeah, we know them, and they text us. They've been here 20 years, and they're sick of you too. It's just a matter of time. You know what a sweet deal you're getting in this area for that house? You're renting? Do you know how easy it would be for me to call the city and anonymously complain about you to the point where you'd lose your job? I know just enough information about you to be creative. And stay-at-home wifey gonna be the sole breadwinner. Start nothing won't be nothing. Signed, the bitch next door. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Naughty Neighbors, episode 28. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Okay, no more bits and bobs today, so let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. Okay, this is for those of you who use musical streaming platforms. What did you find was the most played thing or type of thing on your list, in your year review playlists at the end of last year? For me, this year, it was all musicals. I seem to have really gotten into musical soundtracks this past year. And where are we? Recap. Yeah, 2024, there it is. 100 songs, and looking through it, first thing is One Song Glory from Rent, the next one's a Rent one, then Hamilton, then Fright of Their Lives from Beetlejuice. I did discover Jade Bird this year, who's a very good musician. One of my favourite songs of hers is Get No Joy, then Lottery. Although I already liked the song, I guess I was listening to Blinding Lights by The Weeknd a lot this year. Then again, it's just Beetlejuice, Rent, The Business by Tiesto. Then more Rent, a little bit of Ed Sheeran. Lil Nas X somehow snuck in there. I do like that song, Call Me By Your Name. I was listening to that a lot, I guess. Then more Rent. And I think there's probably Take Me Home Country Roads. Oh, Phoebe Bridgers, of course. I love Phoebe Bridgers. And a little bit of Regina Spektor. More Phoebe Bridgers. More Jade Bird. Mary Lambert. Rag and Bone Man. Matchbox 20. And Taylor Swift. And more musical stuff. Yeah. Oh, and there we go. Take Me Home Country Roads by John Denver, because I do like that song quite a bit. Mostly because of Fallout 76, so I've definitely fallen off playing that game. I just kind of gradually lost interest in it. Might pick it up again, never say never. Okay, and with that, well, that's what I did musically, so let me know what you think in a comment below. And before you go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one comes from Naughty Neighbors 27. And it was about anybody have you fallen on your butt during the cold weather, because I have once so far. Hope not to do it again, but I have once so far. And let's see. Today's answer comes from, if I can get this organized properly. Today's answer comes from Lauren. I just driven back from the DC area. I was more exhausted and stiff than I dreamed possible. Anyway, the dog needed walking, so we took our regular route. Putting one foot in front of the other was hard. Then it happened. We were going up a grassy slope with the lightest of snow cover, and wham! I was suddenly face first in the grass. I honestly couldn't stand up. My body surrendered to exhaustion. I lay there for a long time before mustering the strength to live. I don't know if I was hurt because the ground was wet and spongy, and I was already in pain. I was covered from face to foot in mud. I worried a bit about concussion, but nope. Knock wood, that's the only fall so far. Well, I'm glad to hear you're all right, Lauren. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. I'm making dinner right now, very hungry. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.